Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. So currently, the trending news of the day in professional wrestling is that there's a bunch of contracts coming up due. People are clamoring right now at the moment. What's gonna happen? Why are they leaving AEW? Is it because of the calamity that's happening backstage and they have no trust in Tony Khan to get his shit together, so they're gonna go to a more stable environment? I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. But I am noticing this though. Remember back in 2021, back in 2020, back in 2019, when backstage morale was at its peak in AEW and everybody was looking left and right and they would tell themselves, well guys, this right here, this is the place to come to. This is the place to be where opportunity, it arises, and when you come over here, you're stepping over to the yellow brick road and the grass is greener and all this other cliche bullshit that you hear in order to bring up gratitude or fucking platitudes or fucking euphemisms, whatever. My point being is, there was one point in time where apparently AEW was the promised land, not knowing that eventually the more and more people went over there because you're trying to use them in order to gain a pop. Speaking about the WWE wrestlers, the more and more you're not going to really feature them because you're only doing it for the pop, and then they have nothing to do, and then they sit there and then they kind of smell up the joint and they sit in the corner, then they get stale and it's like a pile of fucking dirty clothes. My point being is, now these same wrestlers, the ones previously before the WWE talent came over there, it looks like the building blocks are starting to recognize that there's really no spot for them in the company, and now little by little they've been leaving in order to go to other fucking greener pastures in WWE. Obviously, it stems off of the main departures like a Cody Rhodes and the CM Punk, and then eventually you start to go down a little tiny bit more. You start to go down in the realms of like a Jade Cargill, for an example, and then you look at NXT currently at the moment, and they're flooded with some of the AEW guys too. Guys like Ethan Page, guys like Shawn Spears, guys like Brian Pillman Jr., and they're kind of thriving right now in NXT. And right now, with the contracts coming up due over the Ricky Stars, of a Daniel Garcia, of a Lucha Brothers, we're going to break this down because I'm starting to see not just the turn, and it's kind of scary in a way when you have to be in AEW's position. Never mind all the stuff that's currently going on with the stock price dropping and them losing like $70 billion or something like that, and the Turner Broadcasting or the Warner Brothers Discovery stock price, which puts them in jeopardy, AEW obviously, because it's like, okay, well, are we going to get that big of a contract as we were expecting earlier? But put that to the side, obviously. That's another video and another day. What I do want to discuss is currently at the moment, and I think you can see it for yourselves, the backstage morale hitting such a low point that some of your fixtures are now currently leaving and coming to WWE. And personally, here's my idea when I look at something like this. I don't blame them. And if I'm WWE, I'm accepting it. Not because I want them to come to the main roster to do something on SmackDown and Raw. For the most part, these guys are midgets. For the most part, why take a spot from a talent who's pretty much essentially the same thing that you are, who essentially does exactly the same thing? It's really no point. But that's for the Raw and SmackDown brand. Now, as you guys know, NXT is coming to the CW network, right? Broadcast television. They're going to be in the same position SmackDown's in currently right now. So SmackDown's going to so pretty much WWE has all their bases covered. You guys, your broadcast shit pretty much covered with NXT. You got your cable network thing pretty much on point with SmackDown on the USA Network, and now you have Raw on streaming with Netflix. They have all their bases covered. You're gonna need talent on that NXT roster. I'm sorry, in the end of the day, I like the roster down there, but it's now starting to become more of a brand than it is a developmental. And look, and this is just my opinion also, this is good for the talent who are already down there because it gives you more wings to grow. It gives you more of a consistency in regards to the principles that lie within professional wrestling fans as far as wanting something that's a little bit more stable, obviously, right? And I think you being in NXT, it helps you out their actual brand in itself because it says to a bunch of wrestling fans that, hey, okay, well, there's, it's now finite, right? Like, there's no longer, infinite, I guess, right? There's no more wondering, like, oh, okay, is he going to be an AEW or an NXT World Champion for how long? Because he's going to go to the main roster or whatever the case may be. Now you're on NXT. Now you're your own thing. Now you're your own brand. The only problem is with the NXT superstars, as much as I like them, they are still green talent. they don't have a lot of notoriety within their name value currently at the moment. Some of them start to establish it, like a Trick Williams for an example, but not to the degree as far as the pacing is considered to be able to validate the reasoning as to why you have that CW network gig, right? So you're going to want to bring in some special talent in order to combat some of your names who are already currently there at the moment. And comes AEW, because as I said it before, and as I'll say it again, and as I'll continue saying in regards to AEW, at this point in time, they're becoming more of a developmental system than ROH is to its own company in AEW. They're becoming more of a developmental system than NXT is currently at the moment to WWE, or from TNA to NXT, whatever the case you want to call it. Right now, AEW is feeling more and more and more like a feeder system than an actual company in its own right. And right now, seeing, as I said before, with the backstage morale from how things have been pretty much cultivated going throughout the past couple of years, stemming all the way back to maybe arguably 2022, it's pretty obvious right now that all the AEW talent coming to WWE just want something to be a little bit more, comforting, right? You want to come to the big times, but it's not just coming to the big times. It's coming to the big times, like I said, I'm going to use this word over and over again. You're coming to the big times knowing that you're going to have a little bit more stability, right? Versus when you were in AEW, all the chaotic nonsense that was going on at that moment in time. So Ricky Starks, let's go with him first, right? Because like I said, right now it's a whole fucking AEW invasion when you really think about it. You have Ricky Starks, a guy who is charismatic in his own right, a little bit on the smaller side, has a bit of a swag to him. One may argue it's The Rock's swag, but it's a swag nonetheless, right? He is somewhat of a prominent fixture within professional wrestling. If for nothing else, he's a prominent fixture within the AEW NXT audience, right? It's a bit of a crossover appeal when fucking with someone like a Ricky Starks. I see no problem with him being in NXT if he's in NXT. Someone like a Daniel Garcia, if he decides to let this contract last over, right? Apparently, I heard earlier today that he's really conflicted as to whether or not he wants to stay with AEW or come to WWE. Again, as long as he stays in the mid-card in NXT, I see no problem with that. Until he actually gets over, like legitimately over, not your stupid fucking dance over, but actually legitimately over. If he's coming to WWE, I don't really mind as long as he's fighting for the North American Championship in NXT, puts on a couple of good matches, develops a character, I'm perfectly fine with that. The Lucha Bros, same thing. I see no problem with them coming to NXT as long as they come to NXT. I hear Penta talking about how he wants to come to the main roster. Why? No one knows who the fuck you are. Why put yourself in that predicament? This is not me saying this because I'm hating on them. I'm saying this because look at someone like a Dragon Lee. Where the fuck is he? Bars, I know. Why put yourself in that position? Go to NXT. Show the fuck out over there. Like I said, if it's true that they're starting to become their own brand again, not so much leaning on the developmental nonsense, then, why? Make your name right there. Be established. Make some, connections if you even want to make it to the main roster by staying on NXT, and then eventually you might get drafted over there, right? Why put yourself in that predicament? Makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Stay in NXT, thrive in NXT. Same thing be said about Daniel Garcia, same thing be said about Ricky Starks. But I got a question for you guys, because it's not just them. Now, they're not signed with them necessarily, but people like Stephanie Vakir, also not necessarily signed with AEW, but she wrestled on their television, right? Wrestled on their pay-per-view more like, if anything else. Then you have the TNA connection also, right? I think when looking at something like an NXT, I think when looking at something like an AEW, you can call it an AEW invasion, but it's an AEW invasion that is not like you're looking at the WWE WCW invasion, but it's an invasion nonetheless though. It's a bunch of your talent that are coming over to the opposition because of how you yourself are running your company at that very moment, being today for an example. And I got a question. Do you think it stops right here? Do you think the faucet stops running right now? I don't believe so. I think personally this is just I think there's more meat on this bone, in the sense that we still have contracts that are going to be coming up in 2026, 2025, 2027. And yeah, do I see the big name talent leaving? No, I don't see guys like Jon Moxley or Chris Jericho, for an example, leaving. I don't see guys like Edge and Christian leaving. Why would they leave? That makes no sense whatsoever. They're making big time fucking money in the spot that they're currently in right now, doing pretty much jack shit for the most part. Same thing can be said about, Mercedes Moné. Why put yourself in that predicament? And even some of the original AEW talent. Guys who probably thought to themselves, and I'm talking about the Ricky Starks of the world. Eventually I can break through this glass ceiling and get into the position that they're in at the very least, which is probably half the reason why he's going to WWE. I know he hates the remarks whenever people say the 4 pillars, because he desperately wants to be one of the 4 pillars. He wants to be the pillar in itself, and I don't blame him. That's why he's going to WWE. That's why, in my opinion, it's a viable choice to go somewhere like an NXT at the moment. But you look at AEW, and I think the dirty little secret that no one wants to talk about is, for everybody who picks at WWE for the brass ring and all this other fucking tomfoolery, there is a glass ceiling in AEW. Make no mistake about it, there's a glass ceiling in AEW. Honestly, when you really think about it, outside of MJF, there's no other AEW original talent who has legitimately gotten over. Really. There's no AEW talent that has originally gotten over. Period. Point blank. Now, you can argue that that's because Tony Khan never goes out of his way to feature them. Hence why, again, I look at the talent that are currently leaving at the moment, going to WWE. It's not as if I don't feel their sorrow. It's not as if I don't feel their pain. But I look at something along the lines of that, and I have to ask myself, like I said, going back previously, is this the end? No, this is not the end. I think more people are going to be fed up with AEW's bullshit. I think more people are going to be fed up with Tony Khan's booking style in regards to not just constantly putting people into positions where the only way they can get over is through matches in themselves. And if they don't get over enough, they go fucking be banished somewhere in ROH, never to be heard from or seen from again. I think people even in ROH, for an example, are going to probably look at WWE and think to themselves, I see that Triple H is running the game right now. I feel like NXT right now is going to get pretty fucking hot with all the current talent that's there right now at the moment, including the AEW guys who are going to be invading NXT. Maybe the grass looks pretty fucking green on that side over there too. You might even be getting some familiar faces like an Ember Moon, for an example, right? People who you would think to yourself right about now they'd be on AEW, but you're kind of figuring out what the fuck is going on here. Why the fuck aren't they on AEW? Again, like an Ember Moon, for an example. But there are going to be other talents. You don't think a Wardlow is going to look at how these guys are going to move going forward and think to himself, damn, bro, they busting moves right now. Right now, what's going on with me currently right now, jobbing on all these small guys, not making anything for myself. How old is Wardlow right now? He's going to be pushing towards his late 30s right now, right? How much time does he have left before he can actually, start living off the fruits of his looms, right? Come on, man. Sound like a Will Hobbs eventually when he comes back from his injury. You think he wants to keep competing in some of these hardcore, bloody, stupid fucking matches at a guy like his size? Will Hobbs got me by like a year, right? You think he wants to consistently keep doing this, putting his body on the line, doing all this, and for what? For what? To maybe get your hands on the TNT Championship? To maybe get your hands somewhere on the fucking, Continental Championship? To maybe get your hands on the fucking United States, American Championship? Nah, man. But WWE's right there. And there's no risk of having to go to SmackDown or Raw right away. Because NXT right now being on broadcast television, that shit's going to be popping. NXT is probably going to be hitting around 700-800, maybe even 900,000 views being on broadcast television because there's more audience awaiting them. As a matter of fact, how ironic would it be if so much talent from AEW goes to NXT and then ends up competing with AEW? As a matter of fact, how ironic would it be if the people from AEW were to come to NXT and then eventually put AEW out of business? Because here's my thought process looking at all this. Eventually, with the CW network and NXT being on the CW network, they're going to just outright be competing with AEW, right? Maybe not on the same night, but for sure at the very least, as far as the concept is considered, it's going to be no different because they're so close in proximity when it comes to viewership numbers. They're going to be competing with them. And I'm not going to say that AEW is going to defeat NXT every single time, but you do have to take into context the fact that currently at the moment there's a lot of people who don't have cable television because some people just don't want to fuck with it anymore. You got to believe that if NXT right now is doing somewhat similar numbers to AEW, then where the fuck are they going to be in a couple of years while they're on broadcast television? As a matter of fact, where are they going to be by the beginning of the year, or better yet, by the end of next year? Let's say that by the end of next year, where are they going to be currently when they show up on broadcast television, having to head up with another television show on cable television? That's just more momentum taken away from them and coming to the WWE headquarters, coming to the WWE brand. And this is all happening at a time when you're trying to dispute whether or not you can get a new TV contract deal. It's bad, bro. It's really, really bad. Now, like I said, in the end of the day, take it how you want it as far as whatever euphemism you want to put across it. I like to call it the AEW invasion because there's a bunch of talent from AEW currently coming into NXT, currently coming into WWE. But my thing is, while looking at all this, in the end of the day, for people who probably think to themselves that this is not going to benefit any of the superstars as an individual talent, or it's not going to benefit the brand as far as WWE is considered, always keep in mind that NXT in itself is another brand. And if they're on broadcast television, that's viability. If they're on broadcast television, they can make, they can make moves and then eventually get a consistent number, like say around 900,000 to 1 million. CW network, bruh, you're looking at another TV deal. That's another revenue stream. That's opening doors for more superstars from AEW to come to NXT. Because why the fuck not? It's more viable. You're in the bigger brand. You're most likely going to make more money if you're a lower talent. Why the fuck not? It puts all these... And look, in the end of the day, it's not as if I'm wishing harm on AEW. But at the same time, you had so many opportunities to make usage of this talent. Like I said, not all the talent have to be wrestling like all the fucking time in order to get over, especially when you do it in the manner of how you do it, because your matches end up going so fucking long that there are some talents left off the card, right? Say what you will about Triple H's booking philosophy, I'm not a big fan of it. But I think he said one of his biggest things is wanting to get people on television every week. Just so, at the very least, people can be familiar with you. You don't even have to be doing anything. You just got to be seen on TV. That's a great philosophy to have, bruh. If AEW would have took that approach, always have people on television. Always give them purpose. Always give them meaning. Sooner or later, when you plug them into a storyline, shit's gonna pop off because you see them too many times. They're in a certain position. They're supposed to be getting a certain reaction. You got someone like a Bronson Reed, for an example, who shows up on WWE television all the time. Whether he wins, whether he loses, you've shown him enough times where he's consistent enough where once you actually put him into a position, even though I disagree with the booking as far as, having to beat him a couple times and then putting him in a position to not be a monster, I disagree with that notion. But as far as the reaction from the fans, it's not going to be dead fucking quiet, right? And on the opposite end, you can say the same thing about the person you destroyed last night, like R-Truth. You don't see R-Truth all the fucking time wrestling or doing any of this kind of stuff, right? Having long-term fucking wrestling matches. But you see R-Truth enough where when he gets stumped out by someone like a Bronson Reed, it's going to actually hit you in the feels a little tiny bit, right? Maybe not me, maybe not you, but I'm talking about at the very least the live audience who are there reacting to what the fuck is going on currently at the moment. That same booking philosophy should have been used to the guys who are currently coming over at the moment to WWE. Not to mention all the backstage bullshit, all the stuff that currently happens at the moment with AEW as far as the turmoil. You're asking for it, bruh. You're asking for it. The AEW invasion in the NXT, the most unplanned fucking invasion you think you'd ever see, right? Now you have almost all your lower card talent heading over to NXT. Go over that one more time. Ethan Page, right? Shawn Spears, right? Brian Pillman Jr., right? Currently at the moment getting ready to go over there. Ricky Starks, right? I'm kind of on the fence about Daniel Garcia, but I'm not too sure yet. But regardless, with or without him, right? Penta and Rey Fenix, right? Stephanie Vaquer, not necessarily signed to the company, but she did wrestle on their pay-per-view. Right, the main roster talent like a Cody Rhodes, a CM Punk, a Jade Cargill, right? All these people you ran off are now currently in WWE when you couldn't even drag these people by the feet back in 2021 and enter WWE. That's not a wrestling problem. That's not a fans should mind their own business problem and get with the business and start worrying about the backstage stuff. Shut the fuck up. That's a you problem. And you got no one to blame but yourself. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me hear some of your opinions. Let me hear some of your criticisms. It is what it is in the end of the day. I don't think I said anything wrong. I think everything that I said was factual. I named names. I gave reasons. As always, because that's what we do over here. We have evidence. And then we support that evidence with more evidence. Because we're based as fuck. As always, let me get the fuck up out of here. I need to get ready to get dressed to go to work later on tonight. As always, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces and a P. Eyes.